Ebby Steppach was only 18 when her voice was silenced, but the secrets she tried to expose may have been dangerous enough to cost her life. She had names, she had a story, and she was ready to tell it. But just days after reporting a violent assault, she vanished without a trace. Her car abandoned, her phone left behind, and her body hidden in a storm drain only steps away. For 3 years, no one looked closely enough, and by the time they did, the truth had already been buried. Ebby Steppach was 18 years old when she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of confusion, fear, and unanswered questions. She was a high school senior living in Little Rock, Arkansas, trying to find stability after moving in with her grandparents. Ebby had always been described as artistic and intelligent, someone who stood up for herself and others. But in the days leading up to her disappearance, something in her demeanor shifted. She seemed troubled, distracted, like she was carrying a secret too heavy for her to hold alone. On October 25, 2015, her family expected her to join them for lunch. She had spoken to her mother just the day before, and while she had sounded upset, there was no indication she would completely cut off contact. When she didn't show up and calls went unanswered, the worry set in. Her family tried to reach her throughout the day, but her phone went straight to voicemail. It wasn't like Ebby to disappear without telling someone. That night came and went with no sign of her, and by the next morning, the panic had turned into a full-blown emergency. 2 days after her last known contact, a breakthrough came, but not the kind anyone had hoped for. Ebby's car, a black Volkswagen Passat, was found abandoned in Chalamont Park, a small, wooded area in a quiet part of town. It was parked neatly in a remote spot, far from the main entrance. There was no evidence of a struggle. The car was locked. Inside were her belongings, her phone, her contact lenses, her makeup bag. All the items she typically carried with her were left behind, as if she had stepped away for just a moment and never returned. What stood out to investigators and family alike was that Ebby had no connection to Chalamont Park. She had never mentioned it, never visited it as far as anyone knew. It wasn't on the way to school or to her friends' houses. There was no clear reason why she or her car would end up there. It was as though she had been lured to the location or brought there by someone else, but with no witnesses and no obvious signs of foul play. The case began to stall almost immediately. Despite the chilling circumstances, there was no immediate urgency from law enforcement. The assumption early on was that Ebby had run away or was intentionally avoiding her family. But her mother knew better. Ebby had left everything behind, including her phone, a lifeline for most teenagers. Her parents insisted this was not a case of a runaway teen. Something had happened. Something dark. As the hours turned into days, then weeks, the initial leads grew cold. The park remained unsearched beyond a surface-level check. Her car was eventually towed and processed, but even then, investigators failed to collect some basic evidence that could have offered clues. The early moments, the ones that often define the outcome of missing persons cases, were slipping away. And so was Ebby. In the critical days following Ebby Steppach's disappearance, the investigation quickly began to unravel. What should have been a time of urgency and coordinated action turned instead into a series of missed opportunities and procedural failures. Her car had been found in Chalamont Park, a small wooded area in West Little Rock, parked on a quiet residential street with no signs of struggle. The vehicle was locked, and inside were her personal belongings, her makeup, her contact lenses, and most importantly, her cell phone. Everything she typically carried was still there, except for Ebby herself. Despite how suspicious the scene was, the location wasn't treated as a potential crime scene. Officers noted the car's presence and towed it, but no forensic team was immediately dispatched to analyze it thoroughly. They didn't dust for prints, didn't check for DNA, and didn't canvass the area for witnesses. Even more concerning was the lack of urgency to search the surrounding park. No comprehensive search was organized. No dogs were brought in. No drones were used. The assumption was that Ebby had left the vehicle on her own and would eventually return, but she never did. At the same time, her phone, a vital piece of evidence, was left untouched. Investigators didn't immediately extract data or trace its last known location. According to reports, the phone pinged a cell tower near her last location for a brief period after her disappearance, but that information led nowhere because no one followed up quickly. If someone had taken her, if someone had used the phone or discarded it nearby, those early days were the best time to track it. Instead, precious time was lost. Back at home, her parents were growing increasingly frustrated. They pushed the police for updates, handed over names of people Ebby had been hanging out with, and pleaded for media coverage. Her mother, Laurie Jernigan, even began her own search of Chalamont Park, walking the trails and peering into areas she believed could hold answers. But she was just one person, and the area was large and wooded. Without help, it was impossible to cover it all. Meanwhile, the people Ebby had accused of assault were never publicly questioned. No interviews were conducted with urgency, no warrants issued to check for the alleged video she had mentioned. It was as though the core of the case, her claim of sexual assault, was being ignored entirely. Her disappearance was treated more like a teenage runaway case than a possible abduction tied to serious criminal allegations. Public interest in the case began to fade, even as her family refused to let go. They posted flyers, shared her story online, and tried to keep pressure on the authorities. But the weeks turned into months, and leads dried up. The community moved on. The park where her car was found sat quiet, untouched, holding the secret that no one had bothered to uncover. Ebby had vanished, and with each passing day, the chance of finding her alive was slipping away. Nearly 3 years had passed since Ebby Steppach disappeared, and her case had grown cold. Despite her family's tireless efforts, law enforcement had made little progress. Her car remained one of the last known pieces of evidence, abandoned in a park that had never been fully searched. For her loved ones, it was a daily struggle, living without answers, replaying every detail, and constantly wondering what had been missed. Then, in 2017, a shift occurred. A new detective was assigned to Ebby's case, and he approached it with fresh eyes. Instead of relying on old theories or assumptions, he decided to start from the beginning. He reviewed everything: the call logs, witness reports, crime scene notes, and the location where her car had been found. One detail stood out: Chalamont Park. It had never been comprehensively searched. The car had been found parked near a drainage area, but no one had investigated the surrounding terrain beyond a quick glance. It was an oversight that would later prove to be devastating. In May 2018, the detective organized a thorough search of the park, this time with cadaver dogs and a focus on the storm drains and wooded areas. The effort didn't take long to uncover something horrifying. Deep within a concrete drainage pipe, just yards from where her vehicle had been discovered, investigators found skeletal remains. The location was difficult to access and partially covered, making it easy to miss in a casual search. But the evidence was undeniable. A young woman had been left there, hidden in plain sight all along. DNA testing confirmed what her family had feared for nearly 3 years. The remains belonged to Ebby Steppach. The discovery sent a wave of grief and anger through the community. Her family, who had spent years searching for her, now had confirmation that she had never left that park. While the discovery answered the question of where she was, it opened up a dozen more. Most frustratingly, the remains were too decomposed to determine a cause of death. The autopsy couldn't reveal whether she had been murdered or died by other means. The condition of the body also meant that vital forensic clues were lost. Had she been assaulted again? Was there any evidence of who had left her there? Could DNA have pointed to someone? Those possibilities were gone now. The time lost during the early investigation had erased them. The fact that she had been so close, just 60 feet from where her car was found, only deepened the pain. Her family had walked that park. Her mother had stood near the exact location, not knowing that her daughter was lying in a dark pipe below her feet. The discovery exposed the painful truth. If the park had been searched properly from the beginning, Ebby might have been found much earlier. Instead, justice was delayed, and her final moments remained shrouded in silence. The discovery of Ebby Steppach's remains marked the end of a long search, but it was far from the end of her story. Her family had finally found her, but the answers they desperately needed remained locked in silence. The condition of her body made it impossible to determine exactly how she died. Without that, there was no clear direction for prosecutors or police. No cause of death meant no criminal charges. No resolution, just more questions. Her case, once overlooked and poorly handled, began drawing public attention again. People wanted to know how an 18-year-old girl could vanish after reporting a serious crime, only to be found dead 3 years later, just steps from where she was last seen. The failures in her case were now unavoidable. The park where her body had been left had been treated as an afterthought. Her car had sat near that very spot. Her family had begged for a proper search. Yet for years, the most obvious place had gone untouched. As details of the investigation, or lack of it, came to light, frustration turned into outrage. It wasn't just a tragedy of timing. It was a failure of responsibility. Had officers acted with urgency? Had they taken her report seriously? Had they searched with the intention of finding something, Ebby might have been discovered sooner. Evidence that could have led to a suspect may have been preserved. A timeline could have been established. Instead, the window to solve her case had closed before it even properly opened. The boys she had accused were never charged with anything. There was no video ever recovered. If one had existed, it had either been deleted or hidden so well that no digital trace remained. Her phone, believed to possibly contain evidence or messages related to the case, was never found. Whether it had been destroyed or kept hidden, it was gone. Every possible lead seemed to fade into dead ends. In the years since, her family has remained vocal. Her mother, Laurie Jernigan, became a powerful advocate for change in how missing person cases are handled. She pushed for better resources, faster response times, and stronger accountability in cold case investigations. For her, Ebby's story became bigger than one tragedy. It became a symbol of what can happen when systems fail. To this day, no one has been arrested in connection with Ebby's death. The case is still officially open, but with no suspects and no physical evidence, the likelihood of justice grows, dimmer with each passing year. Her family continues to hope that someone will come forward, that guilt or fear will eventually give way to truth. Ebby Steppach was more than just a name in a headline. She was a daughter, a sister, and a teenager trying to do the right thing. She deserved protection. She deserved action. Instead, she was silenced. And now, the burden of speaking for her falls to those who loved her most, people who refuse to let her memory be forgotten.